All right, so recording has started. Thank you everybody for joining me today, and special thank you obviously to Parv that is going to join us today and give us a good overview of Power BI data flow capability. Sorry, not Power BI. I mixed the products. Fabric, the new Fabric data flow capabilities. By the way, Parv, congratulations! You are the first session of 2024. So you're inaugurating the year. We have
Nice.
sessions already scheduled coming up. We have another Fabric is a really hot topic, so we have another 360 on Fabric coming up in a couple of weeks. Then we got some more sessions coming up about event-driven architectures. I think I'm going to do something AI related as well in the next couple of months. So there's a lot of good things coming up. Check out the meetup group to keep up with our schedule. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Parv. We're recording right now, so you will be able to also catch up on YouTube as well after the recording is done. So again, thank you, Parv. I'll be online, but I'll
Yeah,
just be muted. And if you need anything, just feel free to let me know. And
beautiful.
we'll be monitoring the chat for you as well. Sounds good?
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. Thanks. Thanks, Warner. And glad to be here and glad to start this event in the new year. First one. Yeah. All right. I think before I start, I probably put, I think we haven't tested sharing my screen. Let's, Warner, just tell me like if you get to see my PowerPoint. And just for everyone who's attending, it's going to be more of a uh, technical session in terms of the demo and all the stuff. Very little about uh, theory stuff here. All right,
Yeah,
so
I
let's
can see
see.
it.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so what we are doing here is, let me see where my teams went away. Okay, that's okay, perfect. All right, so we're going to talk about Dataflow Gen 2. I love Dataflow. I'm using Dataflow, basically Power Query Online. Um, is one of my very largest customer here in Vancouver. I'm in Vancouver, Canada. They're using data flow like for a lot of their complex transformation and all this stuff, which is Dataflow Gen 1 available with Power BI Pro license. Dataflow Gen 2 is, of course, part of um, Fabric, and that's what we're going to talk about today. What we're going to talk about is how Gen 1 is different than Gen 2. I think maybe I have a next slide which talks about the agenda. Why not I bring that? Um, so basically, we're going to look into. I'm not going to go into Fabric, intro to Fabric. I think this was done like if you haven't seen Fabric in the past, but since Fabric is there for now, so much in news. I'm not going to do all the stuff, but if you guys are interested, I can talk about that. But I think we should more focus on the actual topic, which is Dataflow Gen 2. Of course, we're going to look into what Gen 2 is, how it's different than Gen 1, and where you can go and learn more. And I will give you a good, example, real life example where the Gen 2 is so powerful and how it will work with the other components available within the Fabric landscape. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. Before I start, just everyone, my name is Parvinder Chana. Some people call me Parv, whatever works for you guys. I'm here in Vancouver. I run a consulting company, which is mainly focused was on Power BI and all the stuff. I have clients all over North America and other parts of the world as well. Mainly focused on Microsoft Data Platform solutions. I'm in the industry for like more than 25 years. Initially with a lot of reporting on SQL and all this traditional reporting tools, but since Power BI came in picture, 2015, I'm completely on Power BI, and I'm a Power BI community super user. I'm not sure if you guys go to community Power BI community or not. I'm very active there, and I'm also Microsoft Data Platform MVP. This is fifth year for being an MVP, which is really nice to have. So that's pretty much what I do, and day in and day out, and also have a YouTube channel. Uh, it's called Power BI How To. The one thing I just want to point out on my YouTube channel, I don't have like a traditional showcasing the different features of the product and all the stuff. I usually my YouTube videos are more on real-time problems which are unique in nature and try to solve those kind of things which I show in my videos, like a little bit more on the advanced side, but like solving some specific use cases. If you guys are interested in, I'm not going to talk about, like, for example, not going to take where you go to do the conditional formatting in Power BI, but I might be doing a video on conditional formatting when you're using calculation groups. So that, because that can be a very, very challenging thing. So those kind of things is what I do on my YouTube video. So do check that out. Before we start, I just want to ask a couple of, since everybody's here, maybe on the chat, just say yes or no. Like, how many of you guys are like used Dataflow in general, like not Gen2, but the previously Dataflow, you are aware of Dataflow, what it is? Maybe just say yes in chat if possible. I just want to understand like how many people know yet. Okay, Eddie. Okay, no. All right. Anybody else? What do you guys know yet? Okay, so seems like nobody used not ADF data flow. But it's like a more of a actual data flow. I know Microsoft is all confusing terms going there. But data flow itself is a component, is a product, I would say, in already exist in Power BI, and now in Fabric it's called Gen2. So seems like very little. And okay, so let me ask a question differently. How many of you guys have used Power Query? Does not matter within Power BI or Excel or any other means. Like, are you guys familiar with Power Query? How many? Yeah, okay, very limited. Okay, Brent said that. Okay, yeah, perfect, awesome. Okay, that sounds good. Somebody has their hands up. I guess that's saying okay. You use it, Rajesh. I think use use saying okay. All right. Good. So let's first start with since some you guys seems like nobody used Dataflow in the past, or maybe a little bit, and Power Query a little bit in exposure. So let's look what this whole Dataflow is actually. Um, So basically, Dataflow is a self-serve cloud-based data preparation technology. What does that mean is, in Power BI, if you're coming from the Power BI background, or any BI tool, as a matter of fact, there are always three parts of it, especially in any most of BI tools fall within these three main areas. Like first thing is, of course, you have to have a clean data or a data you prepare the data, doesn't matter what source is it coming from. You create a data which is clean, complete, and sanitized, and everything is ready uh, for the reporting purposes. The second part is usually when you create a data model, right? Which is traditional data warehousing techniques, which we have seen for so many years, like how you create a star schema, facts, dimensions, and all the stuff. I don't want to go into those things, but I'm just talking about like three different components of when we go into the BI level, especially in Power BI. First, you have a data, you clean it, and then you create a data model, and you enhance data model with DAX. And then comes the reporting and the visualization, where you actually, whatever data you have, you want to now show that data, visualize the data. So what Dataflow brings is in Power BI, there's a Power Query, right? Power Query is a Microsoft, a low code data transformation technology. It's also has a language called M. That's a scripting language. The good thing about Power Query is that Power Query is pretty standard across multiple tools. It's not like only tied up with Power BI, right? Power BI also use the Power Query to connect to the source and do the transformation. In Excel, you have a Power Query, like other tabular editor, other models, is analysis services. Tabular has Power Query. Data flow, which is the topic for today, is also uses the Power Query. It's also generally known as a Power Query Online because all these tools like Power BI is a desktop tool, right? And Excel is a desktop tool. Now, of course, it's as online as well. But data flow, when the data flow first came, is it's like a your Power Query in the cloud. Basically, you're connecting the source, you're transforming the data using Power Query, M language, and then you are having the output with data flow in a data. Actually, it used to store in Azure blob storage, where then you can connect to the data flow. So that's what data flow is. Basically, it's a low code using Power M language in the cloud. And that's the technology it's all about. So now with existing Power BI or Power BI Pro license, you are already have data flow available with you. You can actually go in Power BI service and you can spin in data flow and you can do the transformation. And now the question comes is why you want to do that in the cloud? Let's say just taking a simple example that you're reading a data from some, making an API call somewhere. And now that API call, you are cleaning the data and let's say transforming the data, and then you're storing it. What does that mean is now you have a data flow created in cloud in Power BI service. Your user can actually go and directly connect to that source. You don't have to every time go and transform the data. Now you have a centralized place where you have already cleaned and transformed your data, and that Power BI or any other tool, whichever has the connected to data flow, can connect to the data flow and get that clean data. So that's make it very interesting technology, and a lot of my clients uses that, and it's actually really powerful. That is actually what data flow is. Now, what change in Dataflow Gen 2? We'll just look into that as well. So again, keep in mind, Dataflow comes with, like, in Power BI, you connect to different sources. You connect to Excel, you connect to PostgreSQL, you connect to SQL Server. Basically, what you're doing is behind the scene, if you never click the transform data in Power BI, behind the scene, it's creating that M code or the connection for your tables using M script and then creating everything for you. So it has 150 plus connectors available to connect to the different sources, and the new connectors keep on coming over time. Uh, how Dataflow Gen 2 is different than Gen 1. Uh, One of the missing component with the Dataflow Gen was of the first one, the Gen 1, was that it has, when you transform the data, it has its own storage, or you can provide your own Azure storage, and it will write the data into that storage in the JSON format, which was very complex to read and all this stuff. So basically, what you do in Power Query, Power BI, you say I want to collect data flow, and then it will bring the data for you. But it was very complex, and now, Dataflow Gen 2 allow you to load data destination. What does that means is, let's say you have a SQL server, Azure SQL server. Forget about Fabric for a second. You have a Azure SQL server, and you are reading the same API from some external source. You're doing because it's a low code. It's very easy to transform the data. You transform the data in Dataflow, and then you push the data to the SQL server. So basically, now you can push the data from Dataflow to your external destination sources. And in today's example, we're going to look into how we can push the data to data warehouse in Power BI, in Fabric, and use that as a destination. So this opened up a lot of opportunity because you can take this low code approach to have your, basic first level transformation, and then you can load the data into the destination. In this case, we will do the warehouse, and then you can have the further transformation using data pipeline if you wanted to. So a lot of opportunities, and this is one of the biggest ask was from Microsoft to have the output to a different destinations, which Gen 2 allows us to do that. One other challenge with Gen 1 was, like as I said, I'm looking at a very complex transformation in Gen 1. If you have a really lot of complex transformation going on, let's say 100 different steps in the transformation, it if you want to save it, there was no opportunity that you can save in between. Either you complete your full transformation and it will validate and then only save it in Gen 1. In Gen 2, if you, let's say you are still in the middle of doing your transformation, you can save it as a draft. It's a big, big win. Believe me, like the complexity I've done work with Dataflow, and I waited there for like half an hour just it to complete all the process before it saved it. So it was very, very painful, which Gen 2 does not have now. And also one more thing is background publishing. What with the Gen 1 was, once you created Gen 1 data flow, as I said, if you have really complex transformation, it will spin, spin, spin until it validate everything what you have done, and then only it will save your data flow. With this one, you can of course save as a draft, but let's say if you think your transformation is complete, you can say, okay, go publish it, and it will close that window. We will see that in a second. What does that means is then you can continue with other work as well. It will keep on doing that in the background for you, and it will validate everything. And if something goes wrong, of course, it will tell. But otherwise, you at least you are not waiting for it to finish and tell you, you know, what the error or any issue you come up with the transformation. And this has an enhanced refresh history. What does that means is in Dataflow Gen 1, if something goes wrong, it has a very cryptic error message. You export the refresh history, you try to figure out what the error is. You know, it was never easy to understand, but this one has really better refresh history, more user-friendly errors, and also tells where it is taking time. Let's say if you have a lot of transformation going on, you can actually understand what's doing. So enhanced refresh history is part of Gen 2. So these things make it really, really powerful. And one thing with the integration with pipeline, which we'll look into the demo today. So basically in Fabric, you have pipelines where you can have a lot of steps you can do. And also you can call data flow Gen 2 within the pipeline as well. We'll look into the demo, which will explain a little bit more than how we can do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly jump into Power BI service here to get to the demo part. But in the meantime, is there anybody has any question until now? Good. Okay, perfect. Awesome. So, okay, let me, I guess you guys see my Power BI service at this point of time. I'm just going to go to quickly show you guys one before I start. Show you one quick. So again, keep in mind, this is part of Fabric. You have to have a Fabric capacity to use it. And minimum Fabric capacity is F2, if you guys already know that. Yes, it is. Power Query is available in Power BI Desktop. Yes, if that answers your question. So I have a workspace here called, I call it Dataflow Gen 2 and Pipeline Demo. And this I created yesterday, I think. And then what I have is I assigned a trial capacity. Again, Fabric give you, if you haven't played with Fabric yet and you don't have a capacity, I think there is a 60 days capacity available from Microsoft to play, to trial with Fabric. You can spin it up and start using all the workloads available within the Fabric. And what I've done here is if you go to the new, if you look at that keep in mind there's two things of it. This data flow, if you go to the new and try to create an artifact here, this is a data flow. That is data flow Gen 1. If you click on this one, this will be data flow Gen 1. But if you go under more options, what you will see, this is all the workload available within Fabric. Under Data Factory, we have two things called Dataflow Gen 2 and Data Pipeline. We're going to look into both of these two today. So because in this case, we are working with Dataflow Gen 2. Sorry, I think I clicked that. And that's what you just click on this one, and then it will automatically create a data flow for you. And I already created one. It's called Dataflow 3. And I will show you what I have in this one. And before I talk about this demo, the demo is about making an API call, get the exchange rate from a third-party source, and then storing that exchange rate into my data warehouse, which is a backed up by SQL Server. And also in this process, what I'm going to do is we're going to look into that. Okay, let's say the requirement is every day for our base currency, in this case is euro, to the target currency, which is these four target currencies. It can have only one record, right? Let's say we are only doing a daily record of our FX rate. And if we make the API call multiple times, we want to make sure that our final output always give us the unique row for each day. We don't want the duplicate rows. Again, this is just for the demo purpose. You can be completely different. And one of the thing why I find Dataflow Gen 2 is really, really helpful, especially this particular steps we're going to go through. Usually, when you're working with an API, third-party API calls, there is always some sort of a limitation, right? How how much historical data you can pull, right? How far back you can go, how much data, maybe you can go back 1 week, but you can only pull, let's say, 10,000 records only within 1 minute, right? Previously, what we have to do to achieve all that stuff in Power Query, especially when you're using it, you have to make sure when you're making call, you're not going over the rate limits, which are given by the APIs provider or whatever the third-party tool you're using. So you have to make a lot of work to make those API calls. But with Dataflow Gen 2 and the data pipeline, we can really pull the data, whatever we need, and then we can have data pipeline to take care of rest of the transformation and inserting or updating the records, right? We don't need to only work with Dataflow Gen 2, but we can also leverage data pipeline. And that's where I find this is very, very, very useful. Again, if you haven't used Power Query or Power Query Online, so it's pretty simple steps. The first thing is, I'm not going to go into these steps. It's basically the first step is I'm making an API call. Now, this is a third-party free service available. I'm making a API call, which is returning a JSON document when I make that API call, and then I'm converting it to next step. Again, this is a low code, no code. I haven't written anything. If I know M code, which of course I learned over time, I can actually go in advanced editor, and this is the script, right? This is M code here. If you know good enough about this, you can actually write this. But if you don't know this thing, you can always use from the menu to add these steps. So for example, when I was at the first step in the source, I click two tables because this is already available in the menu. When I click two table, it automatically added this step. It's called converted to table. So I don't have to learn the scripting language. It automatically do that for me. And now this is my second step. My third step is expand rates. So basically what I did in this particular case is I clicked on these two arrows like this, and I said I want to expand the records. I selected whatever I want, and it automatically added this step for me. It's called expanded rate. So that's what it did for me. I did not wrote any single code until this point. I'm just navigating through the menu. And my next step is was to unpivot the data. Why I want to unpivot in Power BI? We always work with the unpivoted data, right? Always unpivoted is the way to go. And so to do this, I don't have to again add any step. What I did is just maybe I show you guys in a quick demo here. When I was in expanded rates here, what I did is I clicked the columns which I need to be on each row, and this is what I wanted to be unpivoted. I selected my first four columns, I right clicked and I said unpivot other columns, and then it automatically added those steps for me, and it converted the data to me like this. So that's what I want. That's the shape of the that I want. This is all Power Query behind the scene, but we're doing it in the cloud using Dataflow Gen 2. Now, until this point, there is nothing as such which is very, very specific to Dataflow Gen 2. All this functionality is available in Dataflow Gen 1 as well, or Power Query in general as well. This is nothing special to Dataflow Gen2 until this point of time. Again, my next step is I want to make sure that my type of my column is correct. I said, okay, this is a logical, this is a text column, this is a date column, this is a currency and all the stuff. And I added another column because it has a timestamp in the Unix timecode. I converted it into, again, a transform step I added and convert it into date time. And my last step is removed column. So basically what I have is I started from the source, making an API call, which give me the data in this shape. And then my final output, what I'm looking for is this one. This is how I want my data to be stored in my data warehouse. Uh, until this point, whatever we had done with Dataflow Gen 2 is also available in Dataflow Gen 1. What happened at this point of time, this is from here onward, Dataflow Gen 2 goes above and beyond what Dataflow Gen 1 used to offer. As I said previously, in Gen 1, if you have to, let's say this is very simple transformation. If it's a very, very complex transformation, I say publish, then I will wait for here it to validate each and everything before it can actually save it. So it could take 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on what kind of transformation you have. But in this case, what I can do, I have the option, I can publish it. As soon as I click publish, it's going to do everything in the background. Or I can, if let's say if I want to add more steps, which I'm not ready to do that right now, I can always say publish later, that it saves it as a draft and it would not do anything, but I can come back and reopen it and continue my work, or I can say publish now. When I say publish now, what it is going to do is it's going to close this window and it's going to run the whole validation process in the background. I'm not going to do that because I already saved it. So at this point of time, what I have is my data flow is ready and it's doing what it need to do. Go to the make an API call, transform the data, and does everything. Until this point, this can be done with current data flow as well, which is Gen 1 available prior to Fabric. And if I'm happy, if this is what I need, I can actually connect this data flow to Power BI and have that transformed data into Power BI. But this is not what we want to do. We want to see the capability of Dataflow Gen 2, how it is different. So one of the capability I mentioned is that you can write the data to the destination. So I want this data to be stored in a warehouse. So I don't have a warehouse right now here. I'm going to spin one and hopefully it would not take that long. Let's say we go to our Fabric workload and I say, you can, of course, create a lake. If you're data engineering, this is what you will do. But I want to create a data warehouse, which is basically a SQL server behind the scene. So I got test warehouse. So what it's going to do, it's going to spin a workload and create a warehouse for me. So you will see the interface here. Oh, let me ask this thing. How many of you guys have tested Fabric until now? Anybody played with Fabric, or what part of Fabric you looked at while it's spinning here? Nobody used Fabric yet? Not yet. Okay. You did. Okay. Just for testing. Okay. Awesome. Nice. Sweet. All right. Perfect. All right. So thanks. And so what we have is, so I spin up the warehouse right now, but there is no table at this point of time. Of course, everything is empty. It's just create the schema and all the stuff. There's nothing in there, which is fine because we don't need anything in here until this point. As you can say, you can actually click the new Dataflow Gen 2 from here as well. What does that will do? It will set the destination for that data flow to this warehouse, right? So you can actually, from within the warehouse, you can spin the Dataflow Gen 2 as well. But we already have Dataflow 3. And if you guys know, when you spin a warehouse, it automatically by default it create a semantic model for you, which is you can then connect Power BI to your semantic model. And so let's go back to our data flow which we created. And what we want this data flow to do is and write this data, the transformation. When I click the refresh, I want this output to go to my warehouse. And this feature is only available in Dataflow Gen 2. And from here onward, everything is what Gen 1 and Gen 2 they differ. So at the bottom, you will see the data destination. Right now, there is no destination. I can add the destination. And there are 4 destinations available right now: warehouse, Data Explorer, Custo. If you have a real-time data, you want to go to Lakehouse, of course, and Azure SQL database. In the future, of course, there will be no more. There's a hope there will be a output to go to a CSV or Excel. Who knows? But right now, only these are the ones which are available, which is already a big step ahead on everything. So I'm going to choose warehouse right now. And it's going to, of course, ask me the connection to the warehouse. Let me see which connection I want to go to. No data gateway organization account. That's good. So let's go next. Okay, edit connection. Guess that's what it is. It doesn't allow me to pick my test warehouse. So let's see what happens here. All right, so here when I connected to the warehouse, so as you can see, you will see this data flow staging warehouse. It spins behind the scene. I think Microsoft is working on this. These things should not be visible to us. There is still, Fabric is pretty new, but we created test warehouse. That's what we are interested in. And if we look into this, there's no table in our data warehouse at this point in time. Of course, we just created warehouse with no table in there. Now I can choose either create a new table or I can have an existing table. If I have existing table, I can map my data flow output to the existing table columns. Since I have no table, I means I want to create a new one. So I'm going to call it staging FX rate, and I will tell why I'm doing that. So my table name is staging FX rate. So what I'm saying is when I refresh this data flow, it will create a new table in my data warehouse called staging FX rate. And I go next. And now it's going to say, OK, what you want to do in there? Do you want to append the records every time the refresh happens? You want to append or you want to replace? So you want to, it's your choice. I'm going to stick with the replace because I want to show some stuff in the data pipeline, but you can always say append. So basically, every time data flow will refresh, it will keep on appending the record in that staging table. But I'm saying, OK, replace it. So basically, clear the staging table and reinsert the number of rows what I have. Again, it automatically gives the destination because since we are creating a new table, it gives the same name or whatever the columns you want to be output to your destination table. You select those ones. Pretty straightforward if you used ADF in the past. So all the stuff, and then I'm going to save settings. OK, so at this point of time, I have my data flow ready, and I have my data destination here. And now I can go publish because I've made the changes. So once I do the publish right now, what it will do is it should automatically. Now at this point in time, it is validating all our changes. As I said previously, if your data flow Gen 1, it will not close that window. It will spin and spin. I can continue my other work if I wanted to, but right now it is trying to validate data of whatever we have done, if everything is correct. And if it works fine, it will automatically refresh it. I think, which I did not like. Maybe you don't want to refresh immediately. You want just to save your work and not to refresh. But as you can see, it automatically spin the refresh. I think this is something a lot of people didn't like it. Maybe I created my work. I'm not ready to click the refresh at this point of time. I don't want to do it. But currently, it automatically, once you publish it, if it all goes good, it start doing the refreshing. So we can always check if I go in, click on those 3 dots and setting. As you will see, the refresh history is probably spinning behind the scene. I think I tested those yesterday, and this is happening right now. And once this will finish, what we expect to see, if we go back to our warehouse, we expect to see a table in here called staging FX rate. Uh, yes, Warner, you can. So as you can see, it showed up in the table there. I will show you where you can do that. So let's see once it finish. Let's stick to, okay, it finished refreshing. Let's look at the refresh history just for to make sure. Um, yeah, it succeeded. And if I click on that, as I said, it has a little bit of enhanced the refresh history, which were not available. We have only one table and one output at this point in time, so it's pretty straightforward. Then it will tell you, let's say if you have a 20 different queries or tables going on, maybe 5 of those are succeeded and the sixth one is failed, then at least you know which one has failed. And maybe all these refresh fine, writing to the destination failed, you can really find out what's going on. So it tells you like how long it took, what it did, how many data it processed. So there's a lot more information available in the refresh history, which was very challenging previously. If I was when I was working with Dataflow Gen2. Warner, you asked, like, can you schedule this? Yes, you can schedule it. If you go into settings here, uh, at what time you want it to refresh, I think. So here you go and refresh, and then you can turn on, and then you can select what point of time you want to refresh. Of course, you can have multiple times if you want it to be refreshed multiple times during the day. So basically, at that point in time, it will automatically refresh and do whatever we ask it to do. Now, until this point in time, we have our staging FX ready. As you can see, the output is here. And I can write if you're a SQL. How many of you guys are SQL people here? Compared to, I'm not a Python and all the stuff. I'm from the SQL background, so I feel it very comfortable because the one thing I found is people get scared with a lot of other technologies. Oh my God, I'm a SQL guy. All of a sudden, these new kids come on the block, and then I don't know, I have to revisit and relearn everything. Now, for me, I'm a hardcore SQL guy, and I'm a hardcore Power BI guy, and I know the data warehousing concept and all the stuff. When Fabric came, I don't have to learn anything new. It's because I knew Dataflow, I know Power BI, I know SQL. All those components immediately work for me, and I don't have to do any new learning. Of course, you always want to learn something new, but my knowledge of last 20-25 years just went through all these things. So now again, I can write my SQL query and run it here within the data warehouse. And here you go. So we have a data in data warehouse right now, but this is my staging table. Now, what I'm doing here is I said, okay, you know what, I connect my data flow to the source, which is API, did all the transformation, and this is my final output in staging. But this is not what I wanted to do, is because my final output is my table, which I will then use in my upstream systems, maybe in Power BI and all the stuff. This is only to stage the record. And then I want to update another table, which is my final output based on if the record found in that table, then update the new, maybe we call this, let's say this API is changing data every 10 minutes, FX rates get changed. If we are calling like every half an hour, we want to update our final output table with the most recent rate. If we found the record in there, if no record is found, then insert the new record in that table. So that is the one for the step we want to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this into uh, uh, let's say I want to create my final table is called FX rate, and keep it empty for now. Just create again these SQL queries. I know we all know this what those are. So now I should have another table here if I refresh called FX rate. Okay. Well, that's Fabric. So here you go. So we have basically what I did is I took the same staging FX rate schema and created another table called FX rate because I just wanted to be, let's write a new SQL query here. And when you write the SQL query, it's keep those in there. You can switch back and forth. And I should have another table called FX rate here with empty. Okay, it's complaining about that. Still refreshing, I guess. Let's refresh the page. I guess metadata is still refreshing under the hood. Any questions so far while we're waiting on this thing? BO tables. I think this is case sensitive, but let's see. Okay, it is. Oh, interesting. Yeah, maybe that's why I didn't knew that. Okay, that's something new for me. I thought it is not. Okay, that's perfectly fine. So so we have FX rate. This is our final table. Like this is what we want it to be. From our staging, we want this to be get updated when the new calls get made. If no record found, that insert the record in this. I'm gonna delete this for now to keep it empty. I was gonna say 1 equal to 0, but I think I said. All right, let's run it again. All right, perfect. Just empty right now. And what I want to do here is, let's say I created a stored procedure here. I already have a stored procedure in my another environment. Let me grab that and put it in there. And I will explain why I'm doing that. Again, since we have a lot of people here with the what do you call SQL background, they will understand it better. I'm gonna go back to test warehouse here. So I'm gonna grab my stored procedure here. Just what the stored procedure is going to be, basically upsert the record depending on if record is available, then update the record. If not available, then create a new one. So just gonna grab that script here. It's pretty much like a merge statement. Second here. It's complaining about something. I should have that script up front. I think I'm gonna open the other workspace, which already have that, and bring that in here, which is pretty much the same thing. So I have a Dataflow 2 here and a warehouse. So that's things not working. What that is. Okay. If this complained about it, I will. Okay, so I'm not sure why this is not opening. So basically, I have a stored procedure. What does that do is it look at the staging FX rate. And depending on if in FX rate you have a record, it will update that. If the record does not exist, it will insert that. That's pretty much standard upsert functionality. That's a stored procedure. Now, until this point, we have a data flow which reads the data from an API, transform it, write it into the staging table. And now the next step is now it is in the staging table and it clears the staging table. I don't want it to not append the record, but replace it, clears the staging table. Now there is a stored procedure under the hood, which should work as part of updating our final output table, which is FX record. So that's where data pipeline comes in the picture. I already have a pipeline, which I will quickly show it to you guys. So basically, again, when you want to create a pipeline, you go to the more options. Under Data Factory, as we said, we have two things, right? Dataflow Gen2, and the other one is Data Pipeline. So what I did in Data Pipeline here, I created Data Pipeline. This is what it does is it takes all the different steps which I want to perform for my final output table. Let's once this opens up, I'm pretty sure you guys, if you guys use ADF or SS, basically it's an SSIS in cloud, right? So first part I'm doing is I'm clearing the staging table. I have a script written here. What this script does is in the setting, I'm connecting to the warehouse. I'm just saying delete from my staging efforts rate, because before I call even the data flow will do that job. But I just wanted to show here about how you can work with data flow and data pipeline to create your like core data transformation process. So I'm first step I'm doing is, okay, I'm deleting my staging table. And now data flow, I'm calling data flow from my pipeline, and I'm saying it, okay, go to this workspace and call the data flow too. This was not at all available in the past. Now this is available within data pipeline. So we clear the staging table. We call the data flow. The data flow job is low code, no code, go get the API, transform the data and output to my staging table. Since staging table is already cleared, so it will, whatever the new call it will make, it will have that data into that staging table. Once it finishes that, what I want it to be, again, that stored procedure I could not show, but that's just a standard SQL statement. I want it to be now making a stored procedure call. So what does that mean is call this stored procedure, which has the statement, okay, look into the staging, we just talked about what the staging table do. So now I can leverage my data flow in data pipeline to whatever the complexity I want. I can take my low code, no code transformation data flow, and from there onward, whatever I want to use, I can really leverage data flow pipeline to do any further, whatever the functionality is not available in data flow, I can leverage data pipeline and can do more advanced data transformation if I needed to. Of course, here you can also call like if you're a Python guy, you guys can call notebooks and all the stuff. That's part of the pipeline. So you can do a lot of complex transformation here as well. But the point is, the data flow itself, working with data flow was really, really big win, because I can leverage data flow with my knowledge of Power Query and or low code, no code. If I don't know Power Query, with all the transformation I can do in data flow, and then from there onward, I can take that output and do whatever I want to do with that output. So that's kind of what makes it really, really powerful, in my opinion, data transformation tool. Where this is just in a demo, but I tell you guys where I'm going to leverage this whole solution in my real life example. Currently, I have a Dataflow Gen1. It reads a files from the SharePoint, and there are like around 50 or 100 different files it reads from the SharePoint, and the files keep on getting added into that folder for one of my clients. And then there is a approximately uh, 50 different tables and a transformation process it goes to. That takes around 2.5 hours to run that whole process. It's a once in a month process. The reason why it's once in a month, because it takes 2.5 hours. That they have it monthly process. The point is, with Dataflow Gen 2, I have 100 files. I have to, every time I have to process all those 100 files for the transformation purposes. But where we're going to leverage this Gen 2 right now, I'm going to look into the files. I'm going to look into the first, before even I call Dataflow, I'm going to have a lot more work done up front to see what files are already processed. Don't process those files. Take the new files from that folder and pass those files to Dataflow so that instead of processing that 100 files, I might process only one file, which is the newest file, and then have the output to my data warehouse so that I can now leverage that. So that will drastically reduce the time for my customers to not to wait for 2.5 hours. It's just the nature of complexity. The transformation is there. We tried our best to reduce. It was like around 10 to 12 hour data transformation process, which came down to 2 hours with the higher premium capacities. But I think now it is like we don't want to throw a lot more money into this, but rather we want to use this technology to reduce the time. Right, I think that's pretty much. I wish I could show the stored procedure again. That might be hiccup on my Fabric trial capacity because I changed it yesterday, and that's why probably I have some issues. But again, um, the Fabric is again very new, and you can have some challenges. Uh, uh, the one thing I wanted to mention here is that the architect how it works is actually let me quickly jump back to uh, data flow for a second here. Um, if we go to data flow, one thing you want to be as in a best practice you want to follow here is if I go to data flow, the one which we created, data flow 3, um, let it open. If you there is a this is really important and it's becoming more and more critical now. Enable staging. What does this means is enable staging. It if you have turned this on, right, by default it is turned on. I wish it was by default it was turned off. By default it is turned on. What does this means is before when this transformation runs on the query, whatever these steps it runs, it writes the data to the staging lakehouse and the warehouse behind the scene, and then it process and send it to the our final output. If there is no need, if there's no need to stage it. It will run much more faster if we turn this off. What does this means is it will do this whole transformation in memory and then push it to the our final destination. And it will drastically reduce the time to run the refresh time because it does not have to first write in staging and then bring it out from there, but rather it will do everything in memory and push it to the output. So there's a lot of best practices available when to turn on staging and when not to turn on. By default, it is turned on, but you have to really make sure that it is turned off until there's a requirement following the best practices available from Microsoft. So that's the one thing you wanted to do. So the reason why I brought that up is because uh, this particular slide talks about this. How it works is because it has this. This is your mashup engine, which is Dataflow runs. So it goes back and forth to the staging storage, depending if that enable staging is turned on or not. If that is not turned on, it will directly go to the output destination and would not do this dance around these things. And it can improve your refresh time. So keep that in mind when you're working with Dataflow Gen 2. Again, I just talked about demo. So um, here, like we just a quick comparison between Gen 2 and Gen 1. Of course, we talked about author data flows with Power Query. Yes, both does that shorter author flow because you can really save as in a draft, auto save and background publishing, destination, all these things which were not available in Gen 1. The connectors, I think more or less, they both have the same. Direct query via data flows connector. Again, if you're using Power BI and you want to connect to the data flow, you can have a direct query instead of importing, right? In Power BI, you can import or you can have a direct query. So Gen 1 allows you to connect to direct query data flow connector, but I think Gen 2 does not. Incremental refresh is still not available in Gen 2, but you can, of course, leverage your you can have the output to your warehouse, the staging, excuse me, and then you can have your own incremental techniques to for the final output. No AI available in Gen 1. There is a AI. You can write your artificial intelligence and machine learning on that, but I think in Gen 2 it's not available. I think under Fabric there's so many other things available. Not sure if that is required in in Dataflow. So that's kind of what um, is Gen 2 and how it is different than Gen 1. I don't think there's anything else I need to cover. Again, I will share this slide with Warner and he can share it with you guys. There's a lot of, uh, I have put some links where you can go and uh, learn more about what Dataflow Gen 2 is. But I'm really excited about this, actually. It's really, really powerful tool. Again, I'm here for questions, and please do scan this code for your feedback. Just a couple of yes, no questions. Just want to get the feedback on the session. But I hope you guys learned something out of this. I'm going to open the floor for Q&A, and thanks for joining, and really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for the session, Parv. Thank you for covering all that. There is a lot inside the box, that's for sure. We just have one final question here from Akaki. He says, if you have a limit on an API where you're throttled and you can only get like 5,000 records in one call, would you still be able to use Dataflow Gen 2 to help
Yeah,
with an
you
integration like that?
Yeah, you should be right. Again, at the end of the day, let's say it says 5,000 records, and then your next call will be every 30 minutes, right? For example, you cannot make a call for next 30 minutes. Then what you can do is uh, you can schedule your Dataflow Gen 2 or actually data pipeline. You can schedule Dataflow Gen 2 or you can also schedule data pipeline. You can have your data pipeline scheduled to run every 30 minutes, right? So, and then now there might be a cursor pointer you have to pass back, right? Usually when you have a throttling and you have a like, okay, you have the page 1 and now you have to page 2. So basically you have to store all that stuff. Now it becomes really, really easy to do that. In the staging table, you might store, okay, what my next cursor level is going to be for pagination, and then you can pass that to your API call. So it actually opened a lot of, I done a API call, which was very, very complex. And in Dataflow Gen 1, I have to put some sort of a delay in there to make the next call. But if I had this available at that point of time, I would have done it completely differently. So yes, you can surely do that, but you have a lot more tooling available to now handle those kind of scenarios. Previously, you have to really think out of the box to make that work. I'm not sure if I
There's
answered
one.
your question.
There's yeah. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
But there's one last one. It's just basically says, is the data flow a sealed box, or can you pass parameters to it so it is dynamic? For example, if it was a different CSV delimiter or a different collection of column names, stuff like that, or is it more for
Yeah.
like static transformations?
Yeah, so within data flow, you can surely have parameters, but from the data pipeline, I think from pipeline, as far as I know, you cannot. Let's go back quickly here. I just want to, I think from pipeline, this is in the making. I could be wrong, but if let's say in data flow, you can surely create parameters. There's no doubt about that. But let's say if your delimiter is comma, you're reading delimiter from some external sources, comma or whatever, like colon and all the stuff. Now you want to pass that to data flow. Dataflow allows you to create parameters. Within Dataflow, you can create parameters, and then you can, with parameters, you in Power Query, you can do whatever you want to do. But I'm not sure if pipeline, if you're using pipeline, it allows you to pass those parameter values to Dataflow. I know there was a discussion around this. Oh, okay, here you go. My SQL store procedure opened here. But if this is not available, last I checked, it was not. That was like a month ago. But I'm pretty sure this is going to be available some point of time that you will able to pass parameters to data flow, and so that you can dynamically control what the data flow does.
Okay, cool. Appreciate it. So it looks like, yeah, most likely it will be coming, because obviously otherwise it kind of limits the functionality quite a bit, right? Like if you have to pick like a different file name or anything like that, you would not be creating a new data flow every single time, kind of thing.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
anyway, all right.
Yeah, no, it's I'm also looking for that because for me that will be very, very important, right? As I gave you an example where I am reading the files from the source folder and then want to pass it to Dataflow, which file to process, right? And unfortunately I cannot do right now. The way I'm going to do that right now is read the files, whatever the newer files are. Before I call the Dataflow, I'm going to copy those files because with pipeline, I can copy the files. I'm going to copy that files from folder A to folder B, which need to be processed, and let data flow point to folder B instead of folder A. But if this was dynamically available, I don't have to do that copy processing upfront. I can have the data flow take the input of the file name and let pipeline pass that file name to data flow, and data flow does not care where that which file to do. It says, okay, I need to work on this file and do the transformation. I think it will immensely help in my solution, which I'm going to use, but I have to, in the meantime, have a temporary solution in place.
Then last question here from Srini says, are the data flows a replacement for ADF? And not really a replacement. ADF has its own place, right? It's just if you are going to be using Fabric, then they're the go-to inside Fabric, right? But it's not meant to be a full replacement for ADF if you're not working with Fabric, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the question to ask is, if you don't have a Fabric, let's say you want to do all this fun stuff, you need ADF at that point because you subscribe for ADF, you pay for that and all the stuff that's outside Fabric. But if you already have Fabric capacity, Fabric brings us all this tooling to us, then I have to have a very compelling reason why I want to use anything else. If it is now for this particular instance, for example, if I have a Fabric capacity, I'm already paying for it. I have all these tooling available for me. If this is let's say I don't want to use Dataflow Gen2, you're using ADF right now, you can achieve everything that is in a data pipeline, right? So I have to have a compelling reason why I want to go for ADF, right? If I have a Fabric capacity, if I don't have Fabric capacity, yes, and you want to do this, all those transformation, then you will stick to the ADF. So it's going to be use case basis.
All right, cool. Well, I think that's it for today. Appreciate the time again, Parv, and
thank you.
Appreciate sharing your knowledge with the rest of the group, and hopefully, we'll have you back in a few more months, showcase some other functionality.
Yeah, no, totally. I'm all in Fabric again. It's interesting tool. I will have more real-time examples like actually Fabric working on. As I said, I'm already on it and about to use it in next 2 to 3 months about what I just talked about, and I'm going to see how does that goes and how much time we save. Because the purpose is 2.5 hours to process the data at the end of the month. And if they want to process those files more frequently without throwing more money in it, it might turn out to be more cheaper what we are doing right now. And that's what they're going to be real test of Fabric. And I'm super excited about it.
Absolutely. Oh, that's really cool. Maybe we'll come back with some lessons learned at that point.
Yeah.
Appreciated it. Have a good day, Parv. Have a good day, everybody else that joined us today.
Thanks.
Until next time, thanks for joining us, and have a good rest of your day. Bye bye.
Cheers.